My girlfriend made humiliating comments about my finances to impress her friends. I broke up with her, and now she's apologizing. I'm 32, a software developer, and for the most part, I'm proud of my life. I earn a decent living, nothing extravagant, but enough to live comfortably. I grew up in a family that valued hard work, saving, and spending wisely. It was never about chasing wealth for us. We just wanted to be secure and happy. That's still how I live my life. I'll buy the occasional nice thing, but I don't need luxury to feel like I'm living well. I'd been dating my girlfriend, let's call her girlfriend, for about 2 years. She was driven, ambitious, and earned good money in marketing. She was the kind of person who always had the next 5 years mapped out. I admired that. When we first got together, I thought we had the same outlook on life. Work hard, be happy, and don't let material things define us. But as time passed, things started to feel off, especially when it came to money. It began with small comments here and there. Casual like, "Oh, that's a great bag, but maybe not your style," whenever we'd talk about something pricey. I brushed it off, thinking she was just making conversation. But soon enough, her words shifted, and those comments weren't so casual anymore. It would be things like, "I love how simple you are. You don't worry about expensive things." Or, "It's cute that you're practical." It felt a little condescending, but I ignored it. Then came the night she invited me to a dinner party with her friends, a group I hadn't spent much time with. I was dressed nicely, nothing designer, but I put in the effort. Her friends were all decked out in high-end fashion, the kind that looked like it came straight out of a glossy magazine. They all worked in high-paying jobs, lived in flashy apartments, went on fancy vacations. I could feel the difference as soon as I walked into the room. We were barely 15 minutes into dinner when she started in. Someone asked me about my job, and before I could even respond, she jumped in. "Oh, he's in tech. It's steady, you know. Nothing too stressful, which is so great," she said, as if she were complimenting a pet's temperament. Her friends just nodded, clearly disinterested. One even gave me a pitying smile, like I was some side project she'd taken on. Throughout the night, she kept making these little digs. When her friend talked about his vacation plans to Europe, she laughed and said, "Well, I'd love to, but someone's not really into big trips." I could see her friends smirking, like we were the joke of the night. I sat there, feeling like an outsider in my own relationship, fists clenched under the table. When I brought it up to her afterward, she brushed me off, saying I was too sensitive, that it was just banter. She laughed it off, told me I needed to lighten up. "It's all in good fun," she said with a smile, and I tried to believe her. I thought maybe I was reading into things, that maybe I really was just being too sensitive. But it didn't stop. A few weeks later, we went to a wedding for one of her friends, a huge, lavish affair at a 5-star hotel. The kind with a string quartet and imported flowers. I had on a nice suit, but compared to the designer labels everyone else was flaunting, I felt out of place. Still, I was there to support her, so I pushed those thoughts aside. But as the night went on, she kept making these comments in front of her friends, as if she couldn't help herself. "Isn't it nice to have a boyfriend who doesn't care about fancy things?" she said at one point, laughing with her friends. "He's so down to earth." I pulled her aside, frustrated. "Why do you keep saying things like that? It makes me feel like I'm just some charity case you picked up." She looked genuinely surprised, like she couldn't understand why I was upset. "Oh, come on, you're overreacting. It's just a joke. You need to relax." That night, lying in bed next to her, I felt small, diminished. I'd never felt like this before, not even when I was scraping by in the early days of my career. She made me question if I was good enough, if maybe she was right, and I was just being sensitive. But the comments kept coming. The breaking point came one night, when she invited her friends over to my apartment for a casual night. I thought it would be a relaxed evening, maybe a few drinks, some snacks, a board game or two. I'd tidied up, set everything up as nicely as I could, but when her friends arrived, I felt that familiar shift in the air. One of her friends, let's call him friend 2, walked in, looked around my place, and said, "Cozy." It was the kind of compliment that felt more like an insult. Girlfriend just laughed, gave me that same look she'd given at the wedding, like I should be embarrassed for even trying. And right on cue, she started picking apart my apartment in front of them. "Yeah, he's not into decor," she said, chuckling. "But that's what I love about him. He's so practical." It was like I was the entertainment for the night, a showpiece to make her look better. I couldn't take it anymore. I stood up and asked her to leave, told her and her friends that it was time for them to go. She looked at me like I'd lost my mind, her friends sneering as they walked out. I felt humiliated, but at least I was finally standing up for myself. The next day, I told her it was over. I laid it all out, how humiliated I'd felt, how she'd crossed every line. She was furious, called me ridiculous, accused me of throwing away a good relationship over a few jokes. She insisted she'd done nothing wrong, that I was making a mistake, but I didn't budge. After the breakup, I thought I'd finally be able to move on. I spent time with friends, threw myself into work, started doing things that made me feel whole again. But a few weeks later, the apologies began. She texted, called, left voicemails, said she was sorry, that she missed me, that she'd realized her mistakes. I ignored her at first, but eventually, I agreed to meet her. I thought maybe I could get some closure, hear her out. When we met, she seemed genuinely remorseful. She talked about how much she missed me, how she'd been reflecting on her actions, that she was willing to change for me. But then as we talked, her old habits started slipping through. When she saw my car in the parking lot, she said, "Oh, you haven't upgraded yet." It was subtle, but there it was, like she just couldn't help herself. Then she tried to offer me help. She hinted that she knew people in tech, that she could connect me to them if I was willing to work on myself. It was a veiled power play, a way to make me feel dependent on her. She still saw me as someone who needed fixing, someone she could elevate. That was it for me. I cut her off mid-sentence, told her I didn't need her pity, her connections, or her backhanded compliments. I walked out, blocking her number on my way to the car. But even that wasn't the end. A few weeks later, her mother called me out of the blue, asking to meet. I was hesitant, but I didn't want to be rude. Her mother started by saying she'd heard about the breakup and how devastated girlfriend was. She told me that girlfriend had been going to therapy, that she was heartbroken, and that maybe I should reach out for her sake. I told her mother I understood, but I couldn't go back. It wasn't fair to either of us. But she kept pushing, suggesting that maybe, after some time, I could give girlfriend another chance. It was the same manipulation, just packaged differently. I politely ended the conversation, but the attempts didn't stop. Girlfriend started leaving handwritten notes in my mailbox, pages of apologies and pleas. She claimed she was seeing a different side of herself, that she was transforming, and that she needed me to see this new her. She wrote about sleepless nights, how she couldn't move on without me. Each note was laced with the same undertone, though. She never truly apologized. She never admitted what she did was wrong. Instead, she framed everything as her journey, her struggle, and how I owed it to her to witness her growth. It was manipulative, and I saw it for what it was. Eventually, I stored the letters in a drawer, blocked her from every possible form of contact, and focused on rebuilding my life. In the weeks that followed, I reflected on the experience. I realized that a relationship built on respect, on mutual support, shouldn't come with conditions or hidden agendas. It shouldn't make you feel small or less than. People who genuinely care for you don't belittle you, or turn you into a joke to make themselves look better. I'd been blinded by love, by the hope that maybe she'd change, or that I was just overthinking it. But now I know my worth and what a healthy relationship should look like. Being with her had distorted my sense of self, made me question my own value. She'd subtly chipped away at my confidence, using jokes and harmless banter to keep me feeling like I needed her approval to be enough. One day, a mutual friend, a decent one who wasn't part of her circle of friends that looked down on me, reached out to see how I was doing. She told me something that left me speechless. Apparently, girlfriend had been telling people that I was the one who ended things because I couldn't handle a successful woman. She was spreading this story that made me out to be insecure, a man threatened by her ambition and wealth. She'd twisted the narrative, making it sound like I'd broken up with her because I couldn't keep up with her lifestyle. The news hit me hard, but at the same time, it reinforced why I had walked away. She was still trying to control the story, to make herself look like the victim, the successful woman wronged by a small-minded man. It hurt to hear, but I decided not to confront her. I realized she could say whatever she wanted, but I knew my truth. My friends and family, the people who mattered, knew who I was and what I stood for. I thought that was the end of it, but then came the final act in this twisted saga. Late one night, I got a message on social media from someone I didn't know, claiming to be a friend of girlfriend's. She told me that girlfriend was having a hard time, that she'd fallen into depression, and that she needed closure to move on. Apparently, her therapist had even suggested that I reach out to her to help her heal. It was like I was being pulled back into her orbit through guilt, as if I was somehow responsible for her well-being. I didn't respond to that message. I knew that reaching out would only drag me back into a cycle I'd fought so hard to break free from. I was done being her emotional safety net, done letting her manipulate me into feeling guilty for her own behavior. Over time, the messages stopped, and things finally settled down. I focused on myself, on building a life that felt genuine, one where I wasn't constantly questioned or subtly put down. I reconnected with friends I'd lost touch with, poured my energy into hobbies I'd neglected, and even got a well-deserved promotion at work. I felt like I was finding my way back to the person I'd been before her. Looking back, I realized how lucky I was to have learned this lesson now rather than later. Relationships should be about lifting each other up, not tearing each other down. And it's not worth sacrificing your own self-respect just to fit into someone else's idea of success or status. I've moved on, but the experience changed me. It made me more aware, more cautious, and in a way more grateful. Grateful that I saw through the manipulation before it went any further. Grateful that I walked away and didn't let her define my worth. Maybe one day, she'll truly understand the impact of her actions. Maybe she'll realize that relationships aren't about power plays or appearances. But that's not my problem anymore. I'm finally free from that cycle of manipulation, free to be myself without anyone's judgment or belittlement. And that freedom? It's priceless.